Hello, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. If you are out there, I'm coming to you live from Louisiana. We'll give everyone who is able to join us this morning a chance to jump on here. And I'm just going to take you for a little quick mini tour around Louisiana and maybe teach you something that you did not know at all about aviation. This is National Aviation Month, actually. November is. So I thought that while I was here down south in Louisiana, I would teach you something new, particularly about Delta Airlines. So if you are on here and joining me this morning on this Thanksgiving Day, perhaps let me know where you think Delta Airlines would begin. Where do you think Delta Airlines might actually have begun? All right, let me flip the screen around really quickly. And I'm going to show you where I am. So the question that I was asking a second ago is, where do you think that Delta Airlines began? And I'm guessing that most people, hey Jennifer, I'm guessing that most people would think Atlanta is where Delta Airlines began, but that is actually not the case. Um, Delta Airlines is certainly associated with Atlanta now, but the birthplace of Delta Airlines, as you can see here, exactly where I'm standing, which is in North Louisiana. We are in a town called Monroe. If you've been with me before on my virtual tour of the Bayou, then you have been to this area of Louisiana. But you can see here at the bottom of the sign here out front of the regional airport, the birthplace of Delta Airlines. Hi, Gwen. The birthplace of Delta Airlines is actually Monroe, Louisiana. So I thought I would take you here for just a little bit, tell you a little bit of the history. There's the tower of the airport behind us there. Because most people do not know that Delta began in this very small town in North Louisiana. And it began in 1925, actually, as a crop dusting company called Huff Dalen Dusters. And this company rather had only 18 planes, or had, I should say, probably at that time, actually had 18 planes. That was probably quite impressive. The largest privately owned fleet in the world. Initially flew to Florida, Arkansas, and California and Mexico. So it wasn't until 1928 that Huff Dalen Dusters, this crop dusting company that sort of is the precursor for Delta Airlines, renamed themselves Delta Air Service. And that's because of the Mississippi River Delta region that this area serves. Um, so 1929 is when Delta really starts operating its first passenger flights from Dallas to Jackson via Monroe, where we currently are, and Shreveport, Louisiana, which is not terribly far from there as well. So let me go a little bit further behind the sign and go toward the airport itself. And you can see, hopefully in the background there, Delta's logo, or I think it's a widget that they might call it. Jennifer says she's a Delta devotee. Yeah, lots of folks are really loyal to specific airlines, right? And definitely in this area of Louisiana, Delta kind of reigns supreme since it was founded here. So we're heading toward a Delta logo sculpture right before the airport. And Delta's logo itself was introduced in 1959 when it first started offering jet services. So when the jet engine, and jet planes started coming around, executives for Delta started noticing a similarity between the Greek Delta triangle. So, if you know the Greek alphabet, Delta's symbol or letter in the Greek alphabet is a triangle, very similar to the one that we're looking at here with this sculpture. So there's an executive that noticed a similarity between the Delta triangle and the shape of new jets. So if you were looking at a jet from overhead, like a bird's eye view looking down on a jet, then you would see a sort of similar shape to that, right, with the wing and the body of the airplane itself. So a swept wing appearance, I believe, is what they referred to it as. So that's where the Delta logo that we know of today comes about. An executive kind of merges those two things together. And again, if you're just kind of coming in late, the name Delta is for the Mississippi River Delta region that we're currently in. So yeah, we're not terribly far from the Mississippi River in that area. So I'm going to head back over to this sign, get in my car, and hopefully my chauffeur here is going to take us to the terminal of the airport, and I'm going to show you a little model and a couple of pictures, if we can get in there, of what Delta Air Service looked like before it was much larger and moved obviously to Atlanta when it did. So we'll pop in the car here. I'll tell you a little bit more about kind of why I'm looking at this particular tour. So we are talking really about Delta Airlines Chicago and the history of in-flight movies. So I'll give you those connections here in just a second. Interestingly, there are some connections to Chicago and Delta. The first of which is 1953. There was a Memphis airline that was referred to as the Chicago and Southern Airline, and that merges with Delta, or Delta probably, ate it up by that point in 1953. But that route that the Chicago and Southern Airline flew was Chicago, Peoria, Springfield, St. Louis, Missouri, Memphis, Jackson, and then down to New Orleans. So definitely some Chicago connections there. And that airline operated as Delta, Chicago and Southern, for a couple of years. And my granddaddy worked here at this airport for Delta for 30 years. And he had Delta CNS, representing Chicago and Southern Airlines, on his name tag for a few years as well. So I have that personal family connection as well. So we're going to head down to the last entrance of the terminal at this regional airport in Monroe, and I'm going to show you really quickly a model of what Delta Air Service looked like when it was here in Monroe, before it was huge. Thank you, sir, for our ride. Before it was huge and started moving to Atlanta. So let's see if we can pop in here and not get kicked out with our video camera and our live little tour. So we're going to go to the baggage claim area. And over here to the left, there is a small model. We won't try to bother this lady over in the corner there and get her off the camera. But here's a model of what Delta Air Service looked like when it was here. And I'm going to show you a picture of this to verify that in just a second. So here's a cute little model that, goes all the way through and whatnot. And a ticket office sign from way back in the day. And then if you move over here to the left, there is a very tiny little aviation museum, which you can read on this sign here, hopefully. Monroe, which is where we are, the Monroe Flight Museum. All sorts of aviation history. And again, those of you popping in late, this is Aviation Month, Celebration Month. So that's one reason that we're here. But if you come over here to this little case, you'll see that this says Birth of an Airline, from crop dusting to world transport. And if you pull back, all of this paraphernalia and memorabilia in here is related to Delta Airlines. So the little model that we just looked at, here is an actual picture of what Delta Air Service looked like when it was based here in Monroe, Louisiana. So a far cry from terminals today, obviously. And there are all sorts of other pictures in here. This is a rendering of the Huff Dalen Dusters. So that's how Delta Airlines started. Again, if you're popping in late, from crop dusting, a crop dusting company called Huff Dalen there. And there are a couple of other little images there. So lots of aviation history, obviously, in this neck of the woods, since it is the birthplace of Delta Airlines. So let me get back out of here. We're going to head down the little terminal walkway. And the other thing that I'm looking at, actually, as far as this tour that I'm working on, Delta Airlines Chicago and in-flight movies, is that I can also, here, let me see if I can turn myself around. Yeah, while we're standing in here, about to head back out. But the history of in-flight movies actually has a lot to do with Chicago. So in 1921, there was something called the Pageant of Progress. So this was something much smaller than the World's Fair of 1893 or the World's Fair of 1933 that was in Chicago. But it was like a 2 or 3 week exhibit, sort of big conference where people from all over the world came in, talked about technology and all of those sorts of things. But aviation was really big on the agenda there, and trying to fuse technology and different types of aviation. And so you have then at this 1921 Pageant of Progress in Chicago, you have a hydroplane that is trying to put a 16 millimeter film projector in the plane and run movies while the plane is going over the Chicago lakefront. So most people, scholars and people who study aviation suggest that the very first piece of in-flight entertainment, so movies within planes, happened in Chicago in 1921 at that Pageant of Progress. So there's another connection there that has nothing to do with Delta, of course, but it's definitely aviation related and something that I thought was quite interesting that we could put a virtual tour together, telling you a little bit more about Delta Airlines, its history in Louisiana, where I'm from, and about to have Thanksgiving dinner. And also, of course, that Chicago history, the Chicago and Southern Airlines that's associated with Delta around 1950, 1953, when they actually did that merging. So anyway, this is just a quick little sneak peek of what I'm working on for you as far as a new virtual tour is concerned. I'm going to head back out here of the airport, go get in my car, and hopefully have some Thanksgiving dinner waiting for me. So I know this was a very last minute tour, but for those of you who showed up, I do hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining me. Hope you learned something new about Louisiana, Chicago, and film, and even aviation, right? All right, well, I'll close this out for now, and hope to see you back in Chicago sometime this weekend. Have a good one.